tonight on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 29th of April 2025. Next state visit. President Anura Dissanayake to undertake an official state visit to Vietnam early next month. Several key MOUs to be signed during the visit. Cabinet spokesperson reveals. Cabinet decisions. 4-member ministerial committee to be appointed to review state commercial enterprises management draft bill. Cabinet gives green light to establish automated revenue collection system at the Colombo Municipal Council. Under review. Sri Lanka must implement cost-reflective electricity prices as soon as possible, says IMF Mission Chief for Sri Lanka. Also encourages expedient SOE reforms.
It will take a little while, maybe a couple more months at least, in terms of finalizing the review. So hopefully in 2 months' time or so, by let's say June, we should be able to have some more news for you on this front.
Campaign deadline. Campaigning for the local government polls must conclude by midnight on the 3rd of May, emphasizes the Election Commission. Marking of postal votes concludes today.
Cinec Campus Open Day. May masa 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now, in your top story this evening, Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa confirmed that President Anura Dissanayake will undertake an official state visit to Vietnam from the 3rd to the 6th of May. He also stated that several memoranda of understanding are expected to be signed during the visit. Commenting on the ongoing discussions between the Sri Lankan delegation and US officials regarding US tariffs, the minister noted that talks are still in progress and a joint statement will be issued once the discussions reach a conclusive stage.
From the 3rd to the 6th of May, the President will undertake an official state visit to Vietnam, coinciding with the National Vesak ceremony. Several memoranda of understanding expected to be signed during the visit were presented to the Cabinet for approval.
Accordingly, during the visit, it is expected that several MOUs will be signed between the Vietnam Trade Promotion Agency and the Sri Lanka Export Development Board, between Sri Lanka's Department of Agriculture and the Agriculture Science Academy of Vietnam to promote cooperation in the agricultural sector, and between the Bandar Naik International Diplomatic Training Institute of Sri Lanka and the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. Meanwhile, the cabinet spokesperson also commented on several other issues, including matters related to former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, US tariffs, and ongoing investigations.
හිටපු ජනාධිපතිතුමා රජයට චෝදනාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා අල්ලස් කොමිසමට එතුමා යවපු ලියුමක් වත්පන් ජනාධිපතිතුමා කියවලා තියෙනවා කියලා.
ඇත්තටම අල්ලස් After the commission sent a letter summoning him on April 11th, the former president himself posted on social media that he has to appear before the commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption on the 17th. That was public information. Perhaps the president referred to that post. It's possible the former president has forgotten about it. The commission did not directly communicate any such information to the president.
අල්ලස් කොමිසමෙන් ජනාධිපතිතුමාට දැනුම් දීපු එකක් නෙවෙයි.
ඇමරිකාව සමග ශ්‍රී ලංකා නියෝජිත කණ්ඩායම සාකච්ඡා කරලා තියෙනවා නව ඇමරිකානු බදු ප්‍රතිපත්තිය පිළිබඳව මාස 3ක කාලයකින් ඒ තීරුබදු යම්කිසි වෙනසක් සහිතව හෝ ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට නියමිතයි. ඒ සඳහා රජය මුහුණ දීමේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය මොකද්ද?
අපි යම් කරුණු ප්‍රමාණයක් ලිඛිතව ඉදිරිපත් කළා තියෙනවා. ඒ පැත්තනොත් තවත්
We have submitted several written proposals and further rounds of discussions are scheduled. Our efforts are focused on managing this global issue in a manner that benefits the country. The president has also met with entrepreneurs in the affected sectors and were in discussion with financial experts on identifying new markets and strategies to safeguard our local businesses. As discussions are ongoing, I cannot disclose any agreements at this point. Once talks reach a certain stage, the relevant team will make an official announcement.
අපේ කණ්ඩායම ඒ ගැන නිල ප්‍රකාශයක් කරාවි.
ගැන පාතාල ක්‍රියාකම් කරන ප්‍රතුමා අහන්න ඕනේ අද උදෑසනත් පානදුර ප්‍රදේශයේ වෙනි තත්ත්වයක් වාර්තා වුණා. එතකොට මෙවර පළාත් පාලන මැතිවරණයට තරඟ කිරීමට නියමිතව ඊට අපේක්ෂකෙක්ව ඝාතනයට ලක් වෙනවා.
කවුද?
මේ පළාත් පාලන මැතිවරණයට තරඟ කරන්න නාම යෝජනා වලින් ඩෑන් පියසාත්ව ඝාතනයට ලක් වෙනවා. මේ අපරාධ මේ පාතාලේ පාලනය කරගන්න රජයට බැරියයි.
ඔය පුද්ගලයා ගැන විමර්ශන කරමින් යනවා පොලිසිය.
Investigations are underway. The police have arrested several suspects believed to be involved in the shooting. Initial findings suggest that many of these incidents are linked to rival underworld gangs. We are actively dismantling a deeply rooted network involving drugs, organized crime, political elements and even segments of the security forces. We are committed to this process and hope tangible results will be visible soon. We will carry this out without any spectacles.
මේවා කිසිවක් සංදර්ශනකාරීව කරන්නේ නැහැ.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් වන අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Now, an automated revenue collection system will be introduced at the Colombo Municipal Council with an $8.5 million grant by the Korea International Cooperation Agency. Meanwhile, a ministerial committee chaired by Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha Fernando will be appointed to formulate recommendations to improve the State Commercial Enterprises Management Draft Bill. With that, here's more on these and other decisions taken during this week's Cabinet meeting.
A memorandum of understanding will be signed between the Ministry of Education, Higher Education and Vocational Education and the National University of Singapore. The MOU is expected to enable Sri Lankan students to pursue postgraduate studies, including PhDs, at the National University of Singapore, participate in capacity development programs and conduct joint research. An automated revenue collection system is expected to be introduced at the Colombo Municipal Council with a $8.5 million grant by the Korea International Cooperation Agency. Thereby, residents within the CMC's jurisdiction will be able to make payments related to assessment tax, license fees, trade tax and stamp duty through the new system following its introduction. Several acts under the Ministry of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development will be amended to fast-track the economic transformation in Sri Lanka. Accordingly, the National Gem and Jewellery Authority Act, the Industrial Development Act, the Sri Lanka Institute of Textile and Apparel Act, the Sri Lanka Export Development Act, the National Enterprise Development Authority Act, the National Enterprise Development Authority Amendment Act, the National Crafts Council and Allied Institutions Act, and the National Crafts Council and Allied Institutions Special Provisions Act will be amended during the year 2025. Similarly, several acts under the purview of the Ministry of Plantation and Community Infrastructure will be amended within the year 2025. The acts to be amended are the Rubber Control Act, the Tea and Rubber Estates Control of Fragmentation Act, the Samumyamuthi Thondaman Memorial Foundation Act, the Tea Shakti Fund Act, the Tea Control Act, the Coconut Development Act and the Tea Board Act. Meanwhile, a new Plantation Management Act as well as a new act to vest the Department of Rubber Development with the powers of Thurusavya societies are also expected to be introduced. A ministerial committee will be appointed to formulate recommendations for further enhancing the State Commercial Enterprises Management Draft Bill. The committee is to be chaired by Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha Fernando and will comprise Minister of Industries and Entrepreneurship Development Sunil Handunnetti, Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development Vasantha Samarasinghe and Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma.
Marking of postal votes for the 2025 local government elections concluded today. Meanwhile, the Election Commission informed that campaigning for the impending local government elections must be halted at midnight on the 3rd of May.
The 2025 local government elections are scheduled to take place on the 6th of May. Today was the last of the 4 days allocated for government employees to cast postal votes for the upcoming elections. The marking of postal votes concluded at 4 p.m. this afternoon.
Postal voters who did not mark their postal ballots today will not be allowed to vote at polling centres on the 6th of May. We have issued media statements, informed the Ministry of Labour and the Ministry of Public Administration and advised employers to grant leave for employees based on the distance to their polling stations to vote in the local government elections. The minimum leave granted will be 2 hours and depending on the distance it can span up to 2 days.
In the meantime, the distribution of polling cards for the impending local government elections concluded today.
94% of polling cards have already been distributed. Today is the final day of door-to-door door-to-door distribution. If you have not received your polling cards yet, they can be obtained at your local post office or sub-post office from the 30th of April until 4 p.m. on the 6th of May.
412 complaints have been filed with the police pertaining to the upcoming local government elections from the 3rd of April until yesterday. Police stated that a total of 32 candidates and 137 affiliates of political parties have been arrested in relation to the complaints. Meanwhile, all campaign activities related to the 2025 local government elections are scheduled to conclude at midnight on the 3rd of May.
We would like to urge all political parties and independent groups to end all campaigning activities by midnight on the 3rd of May. Any campaigning activity carried out after that will be considered illegal. We also believe that none of the political parties or independent groups will use May Day, a day of international importance, to advance their own narrow political agenda.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya asserts that losing another election would raise significant concerns regarding the political longevity of the opposition. Speaking at an NPP public meeting in Kalutara, the Prime Minister claimed that even the most intelligent opposition politicians have begun to make nonsensical statements after losing political power.
Another public meeting of the National People's Power in view of the upcoming local government elections was held in Kalutara this evening under the patronage of Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya.
Our opponents are not concerned about developing this country. Their sole concern is that they would lose an election for the third consecutive time, which would raise concern regarding their political longevity. It not only affects them, but their leadership and political parties. However, our presence in politics is not solely based on possession of power. Even the most intelligent politicians are seen babbling foolishly when losing their political power. For instance, it was Kabir Hashim who said that Sajith Premadasa will become president in December. Although Kabir Hashim is well known for his intelligence and logical perspective, he has recently become so agitated that he is making ludicrous claims. This reflects how much they have panicked at this crucial moment. The upcoming election is imperative for them as it impacts their future political career. However, for us, this election is important as we came into power to develop this country. Therefore, in that journey, it is required for us to establish properly constituted local authorities.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, drawing attention to a wide range of unfulfilled pledges made by the President and the NPP government, claimed that the government is once again attempting to secure power through deceit. Speaking at an SJB public meeting in Marvanala, the opposition leader expressed confidence that the public would deliver a chastening response against the government's deceptive politics at the local government elections.
Another public meeting of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya ahead of the upcoming local government elections was held in Marvanala under the patronage of party leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa.
The country was handed over to UNRWA with the expectation that he would bring about a thriving nation and a beautiful life for the people. He promised to reduce the prices of goods as soon as he assumed power, but we now have such an ineffective government that they can't even provide the salt required by the country. They claim that the compensation granted for crop damage should be increased. The ironic fact is they are not even providing the compensation that used to be given. The public was deceived once at the presidential election. They were then deceived at the parliamentary polls. With every chance they get to speak to the public, they lie. It is through the same propaganda that the JVP and Anura Disanayaka are trying to secure power at the local government elections. I vouch confidently that the people of the country will deliver an apt response against these politics. I am certain that the SJB will win a majority of the country's local authorities, including the Marvanala Pradesh Sabha and all others in the Kegol district.
Now, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe asserts that Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya should have sought a meeting with US Vice President J.D. Vance, who was recently in India to discuss the reciprocal tariffs announced by President Donald Trump. Speaking at a UNP public rally in Galle today, the former president said the new tariffs imposed by President Trump would have significant implications for local companies and urged the government to take immediate steps to mitigate their adverse effects.
A public meeting of the United National Party ahead of the upcoming local government elections was held this morning in Galle under the patronage of party leader former President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Trump ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඇමරිකාවෙන් දාලා තියෙන තීරුබද අපිට විශාල ප්‍රශ්නයක්.
The tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump have become a significant issue for Sri Lanka, as they have for many other countries actively working to counteract them. What has Sri Lanka done in response? We were informed that Sri Lankan officials held discussions with the US trade representative. Following this meeting, it was announced that the US had agreed to consider lowering the tariffs. Subsequently, we were told that a joint statement would be issued. However, the final version omitted the portion related to the US side. It is important to note that the role of the US trade representative is comparable to that of the Director General of Commerce in Sri Lanka. It is not a high-level political authority. We had a unique opportunity to leverage international diplomatic support during the recent 4-day visit of the US Vice President to India. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reportedly stated that India would support Sri Lanka in addressing this matter. We could have utilized that opportunity by requesting just 1 hour of the Vice President's time and sending our Prime Minister Harini Amarasuriya to discuss the issue directly. Why wasn't this pursued? Following the Easter Sunday attacks, then President Trump personally informed me that an FBI team would be dispatched as 2 American citizens had been killed in the incident. Leaders from countries including the United Kingdom, Australia and China also contacted me, all of whom indicated that the attack was carried out by Zaharan's group affiliated with ISIS and that no other group was behind it. A presidential commission of inquiry was established and all related reports consistently came to the same conclusion. However, the current government is now suggesting that more individuals from the Muslim community were involved and is questioning the validity of those reports. It is even being alleged that the attacks were orchestrated to secure victory for former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The whole Muslim community is being disrespected. Must we disrespect the entire Muslim community to satisfy one individual? The government must provide clear answers to these questions.
Leader of the Sarva Jana Balaya parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira says that Sri Lanka's tourism sector will not offer a viable means of generating a sizable income for the country. Speaking at a Sarva Jana Balaya public meeting in Hikkadu today, Jayavira emphasised the need to adopt a nation branding strategy to develop Sri Lanka's tourism sector.
Another public meeting of the Sarvachana Balaya in view of the upcoming local government elections was held today in Hikkadu under the patronage of party leader parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira. The incumbent government as well as the previous regimes failed to comprehend a particular issue. This is concerning the tourism industry. Given the nation's current economic situation, Sri Lanka's tourist sector will not offer a viable means of generating a sizable income for the country. Although talks have emerged over the rising tourist arrivals, locals in the Hikkadu area may have noticed that these visitors are low-budget travellers. After exerting needless strains on the government, those tourists leave the country after enjoying the many perks provided to locals, such as subsidies and transportation facilities. I hope this government would be able to understand this situation. However, when establishing an entrepreneurial state, the government needs to have an entrepreneurial mindset. However, what is the solution we are left with? The only solution is to adopt a nation branding strategy. We are highly skilled in project management. Within the first 6 months of gaining power over the Hikkadu Municipal Council, we promised to transform this city into one of the best cities in the country. I can assure you that. However, our responsibility extends beyond that. We will transform the Hikkadu neighborhood into an entrepreneurial city, which is the top tourist destination in Sri Lanka. This will also benefit the residents of this area. We will fulfill our promises within a short time once we obtain power in the local councils of the area.
Minister of Transport and Highways Bimal Ratnayake revealed that the government has incurred a 400 million rupee loss due to a flyover project in Kompanavidya being delayed. The delay was caused by residents of the old police quarters complex in Kompanavidya, which is required to be demolished for the project to be completed, refusing to relocate. However, the minister said that with the families residing in the quarters agreeing to relocate on the promise of new residences, the flyover can be completed by the end of this year.
The one spanning from Baladaksha Mawatha to Sachi Tampalam Egadina Mawatha is planned to be constructed on the grounds in which the old police quarters complex in Kompanavidya is situated. However, the project has been halted for around 2 years as the residents of the police quarters have refused to vacate the residences. Minister of Transport and Highways Bimal Ratnayake engaged in a tour of inspection of the project yesterday.
6 buildings will have to be demolished. A majority of officials who used to reside here have relocated to other quarters. However, construction has been delayed by around 2 years due to a handful of families refusing to vacate. Although that is not the only issue, it is the main one. Due to this delay, the government has to incur an additional expense of 500,000 rupees every day. As of now, we've had to pay 400 million rupees in late fees to the contractor. We decided today to temporarily relocate the families currently residing here to other quarters. They will be provided permanent quarters at the newly constructed Harbourview residencies within 1.5 months at most. The acting IGP promised to relocate the families within the next 2 days. Then we will be able to complete the construction of this flyover by the end of this year for the convenience of the public.
The former Vice Chairman of the Sri Lanka Transport Board, L.A. Vimalaratne, who was arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department, has been released on bail. Vimalaratne was detained in connection with an investigation into a house allegedly belonging to the Rajapaksa family in Kataragama. The Tissa Maharama Magistrates Court ordered his release on bail today. The report of the Commission of Inquiry into the alleged establishment and operation of illegal detention centres and torture chambers at the Batalanda housing scheme has been handed over to the Attorney General. The Presidential Secretariat has handed over the report to the Attorney General today following a directive from President Anura Dissanayake. The report, originally compiled over 25 years ago, was presented to Parliament on the 14th of March by Leader of the House, Minister Bimal Ratnayake. Singapore has informed Sri Lankan authorities that Royal Park murder convict Jude Shamanta Jayamaha, who left the country after being granted a presidential pardon, is not in Singapore. Sri Lanka's Supreme Court, which invalidated the presidential pardon on the grounds that former President Maithripala Sirisena had issued it in violation of the Constitution, has ordered that Jayamaha be extradited and re-imprisoned.
In 2012, Jude Shamanta Jayamaha was sentenced to death after being convicted of the 2005 murder of a Swedish woman at the Royal Park condominium complex in Rajagiriya, but was granted a presidential pardon in November 2019 by then President Maithripala Sirisena. However, on the 6th of June last year, the Supreme Court invalidated the presidential pardon, citing that former President Sirisena had issued it in violation of the Constitution and ordered the Attorney General to take measures to extradite and re-imprison Jude Shamanta Jayamaha. The court also ordered former President Sirisena to pay 1 million rupees in compensation to the parents of the victim of the Royal Park murder. When the relevant fundamental rights petition was recalled before the Supreme Court today, State Counsel Sajith Bandara, who appeared for the Attorney General, informed the court that Singapore has informed the Sri Lankan government that Jude Shamanta Jayamaha, who left Sri Lanka after receiving the pardon, is not in Singapore. However, President of the three-member bench, Justice S. Thurai Raja, emphasized that the court is not satisfied with the steps taken to extradite Jayamaha, given that the order was issued nearly a year ago. Former President Maithripala Sirisena was also present during the proceedings, and his attorney, President's counsel Faiza Mustafa, informed the court that the former president had completed the 1 million rupee compensation payment prescribed by the court. Subsequently, the Supreme Court bench ordered the State Council to submit facts related to the progress of implementing the court's orders when the matter is recalled on the 28th of June.
Welcome back. You're once again joining First at 9 on Other Derana 24. Now, the International Monetary Fund's Sri Lanka Mission Chief Evan Papayogiou stated that Sri Lanka must restore cost recovery electricity pricing as soon as possible to minimize fiscal risks. He emphasised that this measure is essential to complete the fourth review under the Extended Fund Facility Programme. Papayogiou made these remarks in response to a question raised during a virtual press conference today.
How concerned is the IMF fund SOE restructuring?
Specifically about Sri Lankan Airlines, how concerned are you about Sri Lankan Airlines?
There has been, in general, commitment by the government from the beginning of the program until now to strengthen the governance of SOEs, to get to the bottom of their outstanding debt and resolving legacy debt, to implementing cost recovery pricing to ensure that they remain financially viable. They will reduce fiscal risks to the government and avoid that they become a burden for public finances, ultimately taxpayers and all Sri Lankans. It is also important to ensure that consumers of services of these SOEs receive the best value for the price they pay. In other words, you would want SOEs run in the most efficient manner, purely on commercial basis, and ensuring that they are dependable and, of course, they are free of corruption. There is greater, big disclosure, good disclosure to that extent. So we understand that the authorities are underway in preparing a medium-term strategic plan to restore Sri Lankan Airlines, but we think these need to pick up pace and take up a little bit more faster pace so we can have a good resolution of all these outstanding issues. We want to see more progress there.
The conditions of the fourth review include implementing 5 actions related to electricity cost recovery pricing. In your meetings with the government, do you see this realizing anytime soon?
The issue of electricity is one where both the government and us see eye to eye, and there's strong commitment in seeing these reforms take place. Electricity and dependability of electricity and the high prices of electricity have been an issue for a very long time in Sri Lanka. So government is committed to taking the reforms and owning those reforms and making significant progress. Our assessment at the time, and still is the same, is that the continuous structural benchmark on electricity cost recovery pricing is still not met. We urge them to do so as soon as possible so that the utility company CEB is not incurring financial losses on a forward-looking basis. And down the road, this will allow for more stability, for more investment.
Can you give us any idea about the timing of the review?
Things are still underway. This is only a staff-level agreement, which means we have agreed on principle on many things of the underlying fourth review and the conditions of the prior actions that I mentioned. I would say that it will take a little while, maybe a couple more months at least, in terms of finalizing the review. So hopefully in 2 months' time or so, by let's say June, we should be able to have some more news for you on this front.
Taking you to business news, the Department of Census and Statistics is expected to conduct an economic census in 2025 and 2026. The census is slated to update data collected in the previous census, which was conducted in 2013 and 2014. The census is expected to cover agricultural and non-agricultural economic activities in 2 separate phases. Agricultural activities will be covered in 2025, while non-agricultural activities will be taken account of in 2026. Now in your stock update, the ASBI marked gains for 4 sessions straight today, while the Colombo Stock Exchange closed in positive territory as a result of price gains in counters such as capital goods and food, beverage and tobacco sectors. The benchmark all-share price index closed 0.35% higher at 15,367.34, while the more liquid S&P SL20 gained 0.38% to close at 4,679.26. Market turnover was 2 billion rupees, with the highest contributions from John Keel's Holdings, Ceylon Tobacco Company and Aitken Spence. The food, beverage and tobacco sector emerged as the top contributor to turnover, followed by the materials sector. Foreign investors closed as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 70 million rupees. And with that, here's a look at today's exchange rates. all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.